and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. So give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or a comment? Perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper. Write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves, and then you respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, talk that get results. You can also follow us for the video streaming of this program via our YouTube channel. You go to Vaughan Radio and click subscribe. Also, you can follow us on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. Your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, again, like I said, call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and 1700. Tonight, we have the show in two segments. First, we'll be speaking with a sculptor. I advertised it this morning as an artist, so I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but the correct thing is a sculptor. And then we'll be speaking with an author. So call somebody and tell them to tune in. It's going to be interesting. Marvin Chapman, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
And it's good to have you.
It's a pleasure being here, Mr. Herbert. It's a blessing to be here.
Okay, so what are you? An artist, a sculptor, or what?
I'm a local artist, sculptor.
Okay.
Vision.
So I was half right then. You're an artist.
I'm an artist, sculptor.
Okay, all right. Well, it's good to have you. I've seen your work, not a whole lot of it, and I got to say that I'm very impressed with it. You do some work, a lot of work, as you said, locally, right?
Yes, Mr. Hammond.
And you will tell us all about what you do. And we also, a little later on, you brought some of your handiwork so that the audience can see.
Yes, doctor.
Oh, okay. So let's do this first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am Marvin Chapman, self-taught sculptor, no vision self-taught sculptor. I started this in 1992, but it just didn't start just like that. I attended the Gingerland Primary School, and my little early years, I used to trace, in terms of drawing. I could remember, 1983, that there was a little competition that was supposed to be done. That is just before St. Kitts and Nevis actually gained their independence, and you could attest to this. What I did, I got the two islands. I drew the two islands, and I put them to shake hand, and actually that became like the logo. And after that, I actually saw some, that was sort of the winner, and then there was T-shirt and all sort of different things that was printed as a result of that. So I've been doing this work from my early childhood, and I attended the Gingerland High School, entered into first form right up to 5A1. I did physics and woodwork, which I mastered those two subjects, and because physics entails a lot of trigonometry, balance, and a lot of mathematics and stuff like that. So, but I didn't know that I was going to be doing this thing until a few years after. And in 1992, actually when I was growing up as a little boy, there was a guy in my village. His name is Charles Sutton. He's still alive, and he used to, he was a stonemason. He still is a stonemason, and he would, in his spare time, he would take a stone and he would make a face of someone. He used to cut hair and stuff like that. So I used to wonder, how this guy could do something like this. I mean, come on. And then only until I got out of school and I started working, and I decided I'm going to try a thing, with the little skills that I have. And I went to Island Tires and I bought a chipping hammer, and that was a Friday afternoon, and in the Saturday morning I went looking for a stone, and I started chipping, and I realized, it started coming to life, I started to, because I started cutting here also, and it's only when I was, like over the individual's head that I saw, the contour and everything such of the head on, and I said, wow. And from there I just took off, and I didn't look back or anything like that. I started marketing very early, so I did my first piece, and that was a success, and then I continued, and there was other villagers, who, we like do a little thing, and we like a little competition sort of thing. But then I didn't just leave it as that. I continued. I saw, this is an art form. Wow. And here am I tonight, Dr. Herbert.
You're sitting in the super heavyweight chair, that's where Edric Stanley sits.
He's my family, he's my cousin.
Oh, yeah, okay, so no wonder you end up there. Now, that's pretty interesting. So, you saw this gentleman in your village, Charles Sutton.
Yes.
And he was making shapes and different shapes out of stone, rocks.
Yes, doctor.
And you thought that was interesting.
It was it was amazing.
And you decided maybe you'll try something. Did you speak with him and ask him any pointers?
No, at that point in time he was living in Angola.
Okay.
And that was in 1992, right, when I started. But I did physics, and that when I really backtrack and everything, so I realized this thing was taking me the physics, because it was physics entails life, everything you do, your car tire, your shoes, sometimes the traction on your shoe or your tire is smooth, you would fall or you would get into an accident because of your tire. Physics entails all of that. I could remember very vividly when I stayed from school in 1989. My principal back then, he was James Neal. He called me to the school one day and he said, Marvin, I want you to come to the school. And I was wondering, well, what he's calling me for? And then when I went there, he told me that Marvin, we want to send you off to America for 2 years actually to do like a diploma in physics, because there was these VSOs and they wanted a physics teacher from locally. So they saw it fitting, but I wanted actually one more subject. I only had physics and woodwork, and those two subjects. I think that it was not enough, so they said to me, I would have to go back and do another subject, and I like no, and I just continued. I started doing electrical work, and but I'm saying tonight, Mr. Herbert, if I had gone to the US and did whatever studies and stuff, I might not have been doing this sculpture thing that I'm doing tonight.
I get the sense that you enjoy doing it.
Oh man, I have a love for it. I get goosebumps many times. Even in certain conversation, I would be talking about certain things, certain work. Sometimes, like when I go to the beach, sometimes to look my rocks. There's certain types of rock, the color. Sometimes it's like I'm just gravitated to these rocks and the color, very fascinating, and I get goosebumps. So
you study rocks?
Sort of. I did geography in high school, so I have a fair amount of knowledge in terms of the rocks.
Is there a particular type of rock that you have a preference for when you're doing your carvings?
Actually, any type of rock will do, but we have volcanic rock on the island, and in 1992 I did a little interview. It was in the newspaper, and the lady said in the newspaper that thank God that I didn't grow up on a like a limestone island like Antigua and Anguilla. But we have volcanic rocks, and I use it to the best of my ability. you know, almost any type of work I can work with it.
Okay. We're going to accept your calls so people can, if they know you and know of your work, they can call and make a comment. They can ask a question as well. So let's see if this person wants to do that. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, dear.
Okay, that person is, I don't think they wanted us. So you've done a lot of carvings. You done birds?
Yes, birds, fishes, pelican, turtles, face base. You name it, I make it.
What will cause you to do a particular item, a bird, a tree, whatever? People make requests, or you just have a desire of doing them?
But if they make a request, I would say rock hunting. I would go rock hunting, and sometimes I would go driving, going into the bushes, into the hills, into the ravines, looking for rocks. For a particular shape, sometimes I would have to force my eye or my brain to extract whatever I want to make from it. Sometimes the actual stone itself would just show up and say, here goes a bird, or here goes a pelican. Or sometimes I would look at it and I would do a quick drawing, a quick sketch on the rock and try to envision and try to, like, I read this article one time. He said the eye of a sculptor is like an X-ray machine.
Yes.
I would actually like look beyond just the surface. I would look beyond that and I would see objects. I would see shapes, forms, and I would go right ahead and start my thing. Or sometimes I would work on a picture, an idea.
Okay, let's see if this person is for us. Hello, good evening.
Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
Yes, you have a gentleman here tonight by the name of Mr. Marvin Chapman.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Patterson Fleming. Yeah. I called to congratulate Marvin Chapman. I'm telling you, that guy is a genius. I worked many years at Music Plantation, and we used to have a famous barbecue every Thursday night, and we used to showcase Nivision art, Nivision culture, name it. We used to have stalls set up, and the artists, name it, they come at Music Plantation, they set up the stall, and the guests come along and they buy whatever they want to buy. And let me tell you, if Marvin Chapman do not show up on a Thursday night, it is not the same. The guests at the hotel, they come specially to look at what Marvin have, and the compliment that they give him every Thursday night. And when they said to us that when they have it, even if you will find that we have him, they said not to have a big group, and we asked what want to see. They said bring back Marvin Chapman. If it's one person that will bring back, if you're going to choose three, Marvin Chapman have to come back. And let me tell you, that guy is absolutely a talented artist, and I'm so proud to be, as a Nivision, to say that tonight to Mr. Chapman, and I'm so happy to hear him tonight. I wish him all the best in his career, and success continues.
Thank you very much, brother.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. I seen some work that he did, and I thought to myself, I got to get him so that other people will learn about this thing as well. Now, let's go and look at some of the work that you brought. So those of you who are just listening by radio, you can log on to our Facebook page. You can log on to our YouTube channel, Vaughn Radio. Click YouTube, go to YouTube, Vaughn Radio, and click subscribe. You get us live, or you can go to our Facebook page, because we're going to go to some of the work that we have here, and you're going to describe it for us. Okay?
Yes, Mr. Herbert.
So here we go. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with the description.
Okay, we have a turtle right here. A turtle. Turtles. I it's like, they're so amazing, man. I just love to make turtles. Next we have a B-12. Actually, it's a bomber, stealth bomber. It's an aircraft done from stone. I actually did that specifically for myself. I actually wanted to be a pilot, Mr. Herbert. In my days going to Gingerland Secondary School, I actually wanted to be a pilot. Doing physics, I mean, it was like, yes, this is what I want to do.
So this turtle, it's made out of what?
It's local stone. There's two, actually, it's in 3 pieces, but you would not really see the third piece. But the shell is done from a type of rock that you get out of Indian Castle area.
Really? A rock?
Like down the Passage of his Crusher. Clyde Williams, he would cut these sort of rocks. You would find them in the IID building, the Inner Revenue building. That has, you know, that nice design. Charles Sutton, actually, I understand, he did some of the work there at the Inner Revenue Department.
Yes.
So this rock that is on top of the turtle, it's like gold, man.
Yeah, that's representing the back.
Yes.
And then you have the legs, the feet.
Yeah, that is done from volcanic rock.
Volcanic rock.
Our local, well, everything is local.
Yes, and then the neck.
The neck. I actually lamented, 2 pieces together to get the head section. The head is a little bigger than the body itself, so I would have, laminated 2 pieces of rock, but you would not really see, if you were to examine it, you would not really see where it was joined, because it was
right. And to get these things into shape, you what do? You keep chipping away?
I would carve. I use a grinder, actually.
Yes. Uh-huh. I
started out using a chipping hammer, then I moved on to a carving chisel that I got from England.
Yes.
Back in 1993. But in 1998, something happened, and I realized, man, if a grinder can cut cement or block, I did a little experiment, and I said, wow, if this can cut cement, I mean, it should be able to cut stone. So I actually tested out one, and then actually went over to Sinkits, because at that point in time Nevis wasn't really selling them. So I went to Kasab. I could remember very vividly. I went to Kasab and I bought this, and I actually saved up my little monies to buy this grinder. It cost me $535 back then. An investment, and I just continued from there, because the grinder would actually give you more, precision. You could actually cut on the line and actually get certain things. All
right, so that's the turtle. Let's go to the other item.
But the aircraft, yeah, that, as I said, I wanted to be a pilot, but I did that, just from, my...
You wanted to be a pilot. You didn't get to be a pilot, so you do the plane.
Yes, Mr.
It makes sense, yes.
I love to fly. I love flying.
Uh-huh.
And next to that is a bowl.
Yes.
Or plate. I make like plates or almost anything. A heart shape, the shape of Nevis, the shape of Africa, and I could give you a hollow inside of that. I do like bird baths.
So you've done one in shape of Nevis already before?
Yes, and the tourists love. They also love that, man.
Yes.
The shape of Nevis. I make a clock.
Mm-hmm.
I do like vessel face basins. Those face basins that you'd find sitting on top of a countertop, and then the water would run over into it, and there's a hole to the bottom.
Okay, let's take this. Good evening. I'm very sorry. How is it? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah. Yeah, good night. Good night.
Yes. Let's go to the next one. This, yes. What is that?
That's a foot scrub. A foot scrub. Almost everybody have feet. So a young lady came to me one time with an idea. She said, you make this? I said, I could try. I'm going to, I've never done it before, but I'm going to do it. And it's a very, very, very great idea. I mean, I go into Best Buy or Rams and you buy something to scrub your feet. I mean, within a few hours or something like that, it's no longer effective. So you go to the hot bath and sometimes people, they will go and they will get a stone, a sort of rough stone, and they would rub their foot or their feet. So I came up with this. I want to enhance it, so I said I'm going to enhance it, and I took it, I showed it to another young lady, and she said, this person said you should put a handle on it, so that you should be able to hold it and like rub your feet. And trust me, it's very, very effective, Mr. Herbert.
Yes, so it's for ladies only?
No, it's for anybody.
Oh, but you designed it for ladies and the ideas came from them.
Not necessarily.
But no, I was just going by what you were saying.
But yes, because I find ladies are more into the pedicure and the.
Okay.
So it's a product that I think
anybody can use.
What you have? I actually have one at home in my bathroom, so I would use that.
Okay. That's very good. Okay. Now, so those are the items we have.
One more item.
Oh, we have another item.
There's a pelican right there, our national bird. Actually, yes, it's our national bird.
Yes, okay.
And I'm not really proud to say, but it's a piece that I love to make because it signifies, nationality. I actually did a piece that is permanently located at the airport here.
Oh, you did that?
Yes.
That's great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I see it, and every time I go there, have a look.
That was a gift to the people of Nevis.
Yes.
Back in 2008, 2009, thereabout.
Mm-hmm.
I love pelicans.
Okay, so that's very good. Those are the pieces that you have here, but you do other stuff. People can call you up and order stuff, right?
Yes, private commission.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how large of a size you want. I mean, it could be as big as this building actually. And as I said that in 2008, I got a call from. Well, I didn't know the number. On the first ring, I sort of hesitated to answer the phone. Within 5 minutes or so, the phone rang again, and I said, who is this? Because the number was very long. Only to find it was someone, I heard this accent, it was a Chinese accent, and it was someone from China. When I got into the meat of the matter, they actually asked, is this Marvin Chapman? I said, yes. Would you be willing to come to China? That was in 2008. That was April. In July, so I said yes. So for authenticity, I said, he asked me if I have a fax number that he could send me the information. I said no, and then I directed him to send the information to Cable and Wireless. He did send the information, and we did a follow-up on that. And in July, I was in China, 2008. 13 years ago actually. When I got there, I asked the guy, Larry, his name was Larry, I asked him, how did you get my number? He said, I got it on the internet. I said, really? He said, this was Sinkis Nevis opportunity to come to China because this was free. The Chinese, they actually invite sculptors from all over the world to come and partake in, exhibitions, symposiums. And they said, they call Sinkits. And Sinkits said, there's no one there actually in the Federation. That was 2008. I started this thing in 1992, Mr. Herbert. I did a little liaison. There was something a few years back, around 2000. I was liaising with a young lady. She used to work in the Ministry of Culture. And this was going to be happening in the United Arab Emirates. So I had to do some drawings and stuff like that to, get selected and everything. And so I think I would want to think that, persons in Sinkits who would have been in that ministry would have known there's somebody in Nevis that does this kind of work. But he went on to say, well, they said nobody there is doing it, so he went, to the extreme, and thank God he did that, because Sinking Movies was, in flying colors, I would say, at this international sculpture symposium. My interpreter said to me one day, one of her colleagues said, I'm very proud of Nevis, because I actually made a suit from the national colors, and I took it to China, and I was wearing it with the national flag and stuff like that. So it was exceptional, man.
Okay, now let's talk about the magnificent, you smile, the magnificent piece of work that you have in Bath at Reliable Motors, right? Just about the roundabout, just at the junction as you're getting into Bath.
Yes.
That was there about about 2 or 3 years?
I took it there. It was put there around the 20th of December last. I'm sorry. It was in January of this year, I think.
January of this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, January.
And I got a lot of feedback from it. I heard a lot of people talking about it, but you also heard a lot of people commenting on it, right?
Yes, Mr. Herbert.
You gave me an interesting story of a comment that you got. Why don't you share it with the audience? And I'll tell them what I'm going to do with that particular situation.
Well, actually, I was paying a digital bill one day, this year, recently, and I stood in the line, and a young lady, she was in front of me, and she said, "Marvin, come here." But I thought she had something for me to do at her home or something like that, and she said, "Why didn't you put on clothes on the lady?" And I backed off. I in my mind, I said, "Excuse me," and I just left it like that. I didn't go into anything, any other, talking or anything. I just stepped back, because it's that piece of work. It's art, and I find that, around here, some people are very, if I should say, small-minded. You look at David, or you go to other parts of the world, you find sculptures phenomenal, magnificent, you name it. And it's an edifice, it's a work of art. You cannot separate art from nature. We all, know what a naked lady looks like, or some people. But it's, as I said, it's nature, so you cannot separate
some of us know, not necessarily.
Well, yes, Mr. Herbert, but it's art.
But the young lady was serious.
She was serious, and a few persons have actually, outside of that, a few persons have came to me and said, "Marvin, Mr. Chapman, why didn't you put some clothes on the lady?" I was like, it's art, and you cannot separate art from. You cannot separate nature from art and art from nature. It's. You find, Mr. Herbert, in this field, any field, artwork or anything, there's the person who makes them and the person who would appreciate. So it's a 50-50 thing. You appreciate it. You talk about the turtle, how nice it looks. That's appreciation. I guess. Well,
is it an imaginary lady?
Yes, Mr. Herbert. I didn't want to put a face to it because I didn't want nobody to sue me, so I just left it as just an imaginary lady.
Okay, so what I want to disclose here is that when you and I spoke and you told me about the lady who accosted you and wanted to know why you didn't put clothes on, and there was a group of people there, we were in a public place, and I thought that coming up next month for the playground, that'll be a good one. So we will use it there.
Absolutely correct. Only the best will do, Mr. Herbert.
Yes, only the best
Only
will
the
do.
best
So
will do.
I'm encouraging folks to go When you're going, if you never saw it, when you're going to get your gasoline or whatever by Reliable Motors, you're going to see it there. And have a look at it. A splendid work by Marvin Chapman.
So, but let me say this before we actually wrap up. A few persons have said to me, boy, you almost make me get into an accident.
That too.
One bus driver said to me, boy, each time I pass is like somebody, he thinks is somebody's, stopping him. So there has been a lot of feedback from that. But that same sculpture came out of China. Well, the idea is developed while I was in China. And I said one day, we are a group of us, we are international sculptors. And even though we are from the Caribbean, we are internationally known. And we actually went a little step further, and we said the politicians need to actually see what actually we are doing, because there was a guy from St. Lucia, and he was talking about the harassment, the problems that he had in terms of getting his visitor to go to China and stuff like that. And he was back and forth, and we were came to the same agreement that these ministers or whatever you want to call them, politicians, they need to show more appreciation. Guests who come to the hotels where I would go, and they would wow, I didn't know this was being done in Nevis. Actually, one guy said to me, his name was Todd Axelrod. He was something to do with Canada and Nevis, Sinkers Nevis ambassador or something like that.
I'm going to get a call, but I could also tell you another effect of that statue being there. The manager told me that he's selling more gas now. Gasoline.
That's very good.
Yes.
That's
Hello, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
And good evening, Mr. Chapman.
Good evening, my dear.
The name sounds so much like a circus. Chapman.
Probably.
The name. Anyway, I tuned in a bit late, but I've been listening. And I want to commend him. I went to a place in Barbados. I don't know if you ever see it. It is called in the parish of St. Joseph. And carved in there's a narrow passage. And carved into the limestone are life-size animals.
Wow.
You could reach out and touch you.
Wow.
And they said it wasn't even planned. They said some rascals, young men used to go in the area just to lime and smoke. And one of them suggested the idea. And it is now a tourist site. The tour buses come through.
Very good.
And I said, our young people, very young and old, they need motivation.
Absolutely correct.
Because until they see it somewhere else, because sometimes our atmosphere or our surroundings are very plain. Very plain. I went to Chile, and every little green space have some kind of a sculpture on it. It might be a piece of old iron shaped into something. It may be an elegant man on a horse or something, So I want to encourage Mr. Chapman to continue.
Thank you very much. I will continue, and thanks for that.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, the more we get accustomed to it, it's a matter that we're not accustomed to it. And have you ever seen the one in Barbados?
No, I've not seen that one. I've been to Barbados a few times.
It's called, have you seen it, you say?
No, I have not seen it.
Oh, it's in St. Joseph. It's a narrow passage,
Wow. And that's one of the things that I did when I went to China. I said I want to, there's a pelican at the Evans Anway International Airport that I did.
Maybe you could search online for it. The animals and life-size African animals, giraffe, lion,
Well, actually, you could actually see it in the rock once you're into that field. You could actually see.
But limestone is easier to cut into.
Yes.
But we have a lot to offer, and I want to encourage you and encourage other young people. Lots of them do art for high school thing.
Wow,
I'm sure they could do sculpture too.
That's something that a lot of people come to me with and ask me.
Yes.
What is the government doing about this? I will tell them.
Something going.
I don't really know.
And I commend other artists, Canada, the other artists in some in St. Kitts and some in Nevis. I want to encourage them to continue. And our people need to travel more.
Wow.
and explore more. They will see that these things are commonplace.
Yeah, it is. I've been to China, and they're persons that have the PhD, the doctorate in sculpting or
I'm telling you,
carving.
when I went and saw this thing, I said, look at that now. Can you could go to about 100 times if you don't go down there, you don't see it. And they've even done some coloring into it. And these are not trained people. These are people who, they say, oh, Rasta, they have talent,
Talent is the word.
very talented. So I want you to continue.
It's a gift.
You know, people will talk, eh?
Yes.
And you have to forgive them because the truth is, they don't know no better.
I actually found it's a God-given talent. It's a gift, and
It is.
it is a gift.
It is. So don't be discouraged.
I thank God for that, because God has been good to me in terms of my
Yes.
whole life and everything.
Because if they can do it, you're going to the Catholic churches and so abroad, you see all these sculptures, so black people can't do them too.
Wow.
So we can do them too.
Of course.
Well, you see, we have to convince our people. And the more you do, the more they get accustomed to it.
Yes.
And
yes.
encourage the young people. Sometimes you're doing something, encourage those who are interested to even participate with you. All right then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Okay, so again, we want to thank you for coming, and caller, you have mentioned that we should encourage the young folks, and that's one of the reasons why I try to get him in and get some exposure. And if you're just joining us, and if you're listening by radio only, you can go on our Facebook page, because we have the pictures of some of his work on the screen, or you can go on our YouTube page and see the lovely pictures. What we got again?
You have the national bird, the pelican. You have a bowl, a plate. You have a foot scrub that you can rub your feet with, and you have a turtle, and you have a plane, actually a bomber, stilt bomber. Aerodynamic. Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can get this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, good night, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
I heard you all mention something just a while ago concerning CEDAW, the Canadian the development program for the Caribbean. I can recall, right? I'm not too certain if it was 84, but between 84 and 1985. That was the very first trip to Nevis. The Canada sent down a truck, a truck that could dig well. I don't know if that was when Nevis.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that we were speaking about that though.
No, what I'm speaking of, right?
Yes.
It's something in comparison to that extent. Because I'm trying to kind of bring back certain things that we need to get back to. Because that was when Navy Jones didn't have to walk too far to get water. Because truck, the very first time I landed on Nevis was at Cades Bay. He had a man named, I think he have a man, because he have not yet passed on to the great beyond. He was once named Jerome Pinney. He was once employed by NIA to drill water on Nevis.
Yeah, okay, caller. I think I got what the point you want to make, but what we're speaking with a sculptor and artist, and we're speaking about, doing that sort of work. So,
I wasn't able to expound on what I have to say because
yeah, but you can always
right now.
You can always do that another time, okay?
Okay, no disrespect.
Okay, thank you.
Respect.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Chapman. Again, I'd like to thank you for coming, and you can make carvings out of stone of specific objects.
Yes, Mr. Herbert. Yes, I make.
For instance, you can make my microphone.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Dr. Herbert.
Yes.
I wouldn't go too much into that because that was discussed tonight with a friend of mine and myself, and I told him I was coming to the radio station. That was
okay. But
that was,
it's
in the pipeline.
I wouldn't ask you if you can do ladies because you did one and it got you in trouble. Right? Anyway, it's good to have you. Where can you? How can people contact you though?
Oh yes, my number is actually on WhatsApp. My number is 663-5636. That's 5636. Yes.
Yes.
I'm on WhatsApp.
Okay.
I'm trying to get into some, more things in terms of advertising.
Right, and if folks want something done, they can contact you and tell you about it, and then you can get it done. Let me ask you, time-wise.
Yes.
Let's look at the turtle. Okay. How long did it take you to do that?
It'll take me about 2 days, 2.5 days.
Oh, really?
But it's a lot of intense work with almost 30 years experience.
Yes.
29 years ago, I could not have made a turtle. I could not have made a bull or pelican. I was sort of limited, but as I grow, it's like they say red wine,
How long it will take you to make a foot scrub?
Let's say about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Okay. So it will be easy for me to get one.
Yes, Mr. Herbert.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you very much.
I thank you very much, Mr. White. It's an honor to be here. It's a privilege. I mean, words can't express. But before we actually wrap up, Mr. Herbert, there's a little token of appreciation that I have here. I'm going to present it to you. I want you to use it, Mr. Herbert. When I say use it, it's pretty safe to eat from. Actually, it's a plate, a stone plate from our local rocks, and when you get it into your hand, you're going to be like, wow.
Oh, really? Well, you're presenting it to me.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Herbert.
Well, I'm going to send the lady so you can present it to her, so she will
no problem
give me.
whatsoever,
Okay, so she can come over there and get it from you.
Thank you very much.
And we very much appreciative of it. And then what I would also like is a foot scrub.
Sure.
Okay. Now,
and you don't have to go. You have that, and you don't have to go nowhere to scrub it. Going to pay X amount of money to.
Right.
You have one.
But the long lady is not. Where is she? She's there.
No, Mr. Herbert.
Okay, I'm gonna get. Okay, there she is. She doesn't want. She doesn't want. She's camera shy. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
And all the very best in your endeavors.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to use some of your work or advertise it more on the playground for December.
I actually have something.
Oh, you have something for the playground too?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that is even better.
We'll be talking about that. In the very near future.
Okay, so we will. So that's something great, and look at how we just make it happen. So that's something people can look forward to for the playground for this year.
Yes, Mr.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
God bless you, man.
Yes. This is Thought That Get Results. Marvin Chapman, an artist, a sculptor. We've seen some of the work that he has done right here on a display, and we'll be back with our second segment right after these.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builder's Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, We're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Back now with our second segment of the program. As advertised, we told you we had a sculptor, an artist, and we also have an author. And he is more things than an author as well. But we've got a book, and we were speaking about something local and Nivision, and we'll be continuing in that same vein. I'm sure that by the time we get into this discussion, almost everybody would say, that's my story. But it is written by, good evening, Mr. Manners.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
Hansel F. Manners.
Yes, I'm indeed glad to be here and looking forward to our time together.
And it's very good to have you. Now,
thank you.
Now, we would have a number of persons, not only on Nevis, but Nevisians who are abroad and all that, who are listening. Why don't we do a little background so that by the time you're finished, they will say, oh, that's my teacher, etc. So give us a little background on you, and then we get into the full discussion.
As to who I am?
Yes.
Well, I'm Hansel Manners, and I celebrated my birthday on the 17th of November, 77 years old. So I go back a long way. I started out life as my working life as a teacher, and I was lucky to have taught Webbo in secondary school. I was a primary school teacher. I'm a trained teacher, having gone to the Leeward Islands College in Antigua, and I taught for 13 years. And then I shifted to the field of business, and the rest of my business story, at least part of it, is told in the book. So I won't say any more about that right now, but I've done other things in life. I love writing, so this is my second book. Many people will remember my first book, Bambouche, a collection of short stories on Nevis, and I've been involved in business as well, worked in the commercial sector, and I'm always pleased to mention a highlight of my business career as having been the first chairman of our local institution, the Bank of Nevis, something I'm very proud of. Got me into a lot of trouble along the way, a big sacrifice, but I'm proud to know that I was the founding chairman and spent 23 years of my working life as a director of the bank. I could say more, but I'll stop there for now.
But let me go on a little more on that. And that was more significant of just being a bank, right? It being the institution for Nevis at that time.
It was. That is what I'm proud of, because at the time that we got involved, everybody knows Mr. Daniel was the driving force behind the bank, and many people made contributions. But at the time that the bank started, the future didn't look bright, and many people avoided getting involved. They gave money, yes, but many people didn't want to be part of the management because they were afraid of what would happen. Many people thought that the bank would fail, and so people said, not me, I'm not getting involved. And there was a lot of chatter about this bank is not going to last. And we had lots of pressure in the early years as the bank made losses for the first 6 years, and those are the tough days. I remember, and I always tell this story, which is somewhat humorous. I love to tell stories. That when I was called by Simeon Daniel on a Sunday afternoon and asked whether, he surprised me, whether I would take on the job of being the chairman of the bank. I think he asked me because I had just completed my professional accountancy qualification 2 or 3 years before. But I was surprised. But my wife was not an islander. She was away at the University of the West Indies. I would say later in part of the book that at the time that I went away to do my accountancy qualification, that she had not yet gone to university, but she went later in 1985. So when I got the call, she was not around. And foolish me, I told him yes without calling her and asking what she thought. And several years after, when the bank had difficult times, making losses and having big problems in the early years, I kind of regretted, I should have called her and asked her, and she might have told me, don't get involved in that. But eventually it worked out, but those are the tough times that I love to talk about.
Yes. So the name of the book is Beyond the Bush.
Beyond the Bush.
And as I had mentioned to you, having gone through most of it, there's some very intriguing parts that I perhaps would like to highlight, and persons can get a copy and go through it, and I can guarantee you that you wouldn't want to put it down once you started. You had mentioned that you went off to study.
Yes.
And it was not a walk in the park.
No, it was not.
You went to England.
But could I, before you you do that though, could I just let the listeners know, summarize the book?
Yes.
Because the book consists of 3 sections. The name of the book is Beyond the Bush and More. And some might wonder, why this name? I struggled with getting an appropriate name for the book, and I tried 1 or 2, and I remember some of my siblings gave them the thumbs down. I like names which are somewhat abstract, and so I went searching again. And then it hit me that Nevis is a very bushy place. And I mentioned that on the cover, on the back cover of the book, it's a place with lots of trees. People who have come to Nevis have commented that one thing they like about Nevis is the lots of trees. And I've been to several Caribbean islands, and Nevis stands out as being very bushy, very full of trees. And so I chose that kind of name to reflect the bushiness of the place. And the thought is that here is bushy Nevis, but behind the bush there are lots of stories to be told.
Right.
And so the book consists of 3 sections. The first section is Nevis as it was in 1940s to 1960s. I was born in 1944, and so I grew up in the late 40s, 50s, 60s as a young boy, and I've always been somewhat intrigued by telling the story of those days. So that's section 1. Section 2 consists of poems and a few songs about Nevis, all about Nevis. The book is about Nevis. Those people who know me well know I write poetry. I've taken part in the poetry in the square, and I've done several of that type of work. So I've listed in that section several poems and the songs which I have in my repertoire, all about Nevis. And I guess we can get into some of them later. And then the final section, which you started talking about, is a very difficult personal journey, as it says on the cover, about my move from being a teacher to becoming a chartered accountant, which is, as I said in the book, a story I had to tell.
And to go back and you get in the title and you settled on Beyond the Bush.
Yes.
And for the younger folks, we used to be a connotation as well of living in the bush.
Living in the bush.
And people, believe it or not, there might be some younger folks who may not know what we mean when we say the bush. But you did explain trees, a lot of trees and so on.
But it's because bush could have a connotation and a different connotation.
Yes.
Maybe meaning weeds but I think Nevis is a bushy place. I can say a tree place, but bushy place.
Yes.
You drive along the street even from here to Pinnes, and there's trees on either side. So
and talking about the trees, and you even spoke about growing up.
Yes.
In the Gingerland area.
In the Gingerland area.
And you spoke and referenced some of the folks who grew up with you.
Yes. The story, the book, this first section, which talks about Nevis as it was, it's not about me, but it's Nevis as it was in those days, as I experienced it. So there's a lot of me in it, in telling the story, because well, as I said, I'm the one telling the story, and I was there.
Yes.
So I had to tell it from my standpoint. So I speak about the foods we ate, the clothes we wear, the second-hand clothes we got from New York, the fact that I had my donkey all when I was in secondary school. My donkey was my friend and partner, and things like those. Things that the children of today maybe don't know about.
And you also you talk about the clothes.
Yes.
But there is one thing that stood out to me when I was reading it, and it seemed to suggest that making a particular decision to buy your first suit, your first coat, but it then you began to it sort of found yourself. So tell us a little bit about that.
About that first suit.
Yes.
Well,
first.
That story comes in the context of the clothes we wore at the time. And I think I was telling the story that in the 1950s, dress was different. The men wore full suits to church with ties, and even the boys would be wearing ties and coats. When I got confirmed as a young fella at the Methodist church, I had to dress in all white. White suit. So my parents had to go to the tailor and get a white suit made for us to get confirmed in. So it was common for everybody to wear a suit. So the story about my plaid coat is I was a little older then, already left school and grammar school and was teaching, and I ventured forth and bought a lovely plaid coat I saw somewhere in a store. It was in a way multicolored, striped, grey-green stripes, but as a young fellow I got caught by this coat, so I bought it. And one Sunday as I stepped out from my house to go to church, my good father was not attending church that day, so we were standing on the gallery. And as I came out dressed in tie and my plaid coat, he looked at me and he was pretty annoyed. to see his son leaving the house in a striped coat going to church. And I remember he chastised me. And he said, "What are you playing? You expect to go to church in that," and that kind of stuff. And maybe because I was already 18 or 19, I went along in my coat. And as I say in the book, I was pleased about a couple Sundays later when I came out of my house with the same coat, and he looked at me and he said, he wanted to say something, and he said to me, "Hey, the coat ain't look too bad now." Which was interesting to me because it reflected that over time he had come to accept that a young fellow maybe didn't look so bad in a pretty coat. And that's the story of that.
And it told me when I read it and his reaction later on, sometimes you gotta go with who you are.
You have to go with who you are. Yes, because I continued wearing my coat, and he changed over time to accept that the coat was acceptable.
Yeah, and you also, another particular part, and I'm encouraging people to get the book and read it. I'm highlighting some of the stuff that I really stand out and I learned something from. And some persons, as I said as well, probably think, well, that's sort of my story or a division story. And you went away to study, and as I said, it wasn't a walk in the park. You had your
Could I encourage? Could we do something? Could we deal with section 1 first?
Okay.
And then we'll move on to section 3, which is, you seem to want to get into you seem to want to get into my England story.
Yes, because it's so intriguing.
Yes, but let us spend a little time on section 1 first.
Oh, okay.
Which talks about Nevis as it was, because I also think that section is very intriguing. And some of the things, I tell the story that my grandfather, my father was from Hullground. We are all from Hullground, and my mother was from Rollins. And well, first let me say something first. In the introduction, I make some points about why it is important for one to look back, because section 1 is about looking back, for me, at what life was. And I make the point on the back of the book that I think the book will be interesting to the older ones who grew up in that period and who would listen to these stories and have a little laugh and say, well, that was me and that was life in those times, and so on and so forth. I don't know if you've ever heard a group of Nevisians, whether here in New York or anywhere, talking about their young days. And you notice that they clamor to see who was poorest.
Yes.
One fella say, I had to sleep on a grass bed, and another fella something, man, that's nothing, man, I slept on the floor. So people like to tell their stories of where they came from.
Yes.
Because I think it gives them a sense of, that is where I came from, and look at where I am now.
Yes.
And it gives them a sense of triumph that they have overcome the odds. So I do think that the stories of the 1940s and 50s would resonate with a lot of people who would look back and say, as you said earlier, that is my story. That is the way I grew up. But it also, I think, would be important to the younger generation, because I am convinced that part of the problem we have in our society is that the younger people have no idea of what life 40 years ago was in Nevis. They have grown up to know cell phones and computers and Google and so on, and they can be forgiven in thinking that that is life, that is the way life always was, because maybe we, the older ones, are guilty of not telling the story of what life was in the 50s. When there was no TV, there was no cell phone, there was no computer, there was no electricity in Nevis, and so on and so forth. So I do think they need to know, because it gives them a sense of where their parents come from, and it gives them a sense of also of the difficulties that have brought them, maybe through their parents, where they are now. And I think learning of the past, history, always has benefit for people. It gives them a sense of their roots, of where they have come from, of things they have to be thankful for, and so on and so forth.
But how well you think we're doing with that, though, that same history? And it's almost when we talk to the younger folks, we almost seem to accuse them of not knowing.
Well, I agree. We accuse them of not knowing without thinking that we, the older ones, are to blame.
Right.
So we blame them and we chastise them and so on. But yes, I don't think we, the older ones, have been very great at telling our story, of telling the way it used to be. And that is why I am very pleased with the contents of this book, because, as I said, it's all about Nevis, but it gives a sense. So it's educational, because it tells you what life used to be like in the 50s. Let me say, I've tried to make it interesting. I think writing is about making what you write interesting to read. Now, sometimes you read a book and after one chapter you put it down because you feel it's not gripping, it's not interesting. I have tried to make this book interesting, and I might go bold to say I guarantee it will be interesting for the reader. Maybe you can comment on that.
Well, I've already said that, and it had me going to section 3 before I even cover section 1.
Well,
so that's some evidence.
I tried to make it interesting, and I need to say something here, because, as I said earlier, this is my second book, and I have a postcard at home which I haven't thrown away. I got it in 2008, and I don't think I would ever throw it away, because this card came to me in the mail, and it simply said, I bought a copy of Bambouche when I was in Nevis the other day. Mighty enjoyable. And it was signed by somebody. The thing about it is that it's somebody I don't know. He doesn't know me. He just came to Nevis, picked up Bambouche, and enjoyed it so much. He just wrote my name on it, Nevis, and dropped it in the mail. And it reached me. Like he had to say something.
Yes.
So, I hope and I think that this book will be the same way.
While we and this first section, maybe we can interject here and then a little later on. How do we get the book?
How do we get the book?
Yes.
The book will be sold locally. I have not yet formed up yet. It will be at places like the Historical Society. I'm having a launch on the 8th, on December the 8th. That's next week, Wednesday. And that's my first public event. Well, apart from this, it's not the first. It's just a launch, and books will be sold there. I'm still organizing other places in Nevis to get it sold. I have booked it on Amazon, but I'll say here for everybody to know that I'm having a few issues. It is, if you go to Amazon right now and check it, you'll find it on Amazon. I did it myself, and it was a difficult process of registering a book on Amazon, and there are a few little glitches I have to work out, like my sister in England tells me that she tried to buy it and it said it's not available in the UK. Little things like those which I have to sort out hopefully before they launch next week. But it will be on Amazon.com, and it will be in stores locally.
Okay.
And the book carries my telephone number and my email, and anybody can call me and say, can I get a book? And it will be delivered.
Okay. Let me get a break. This is Thought That Get Results. Hansel Manners is the author of Beyond the Bush and More.
St. Kitts. listening to Vaughn.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, you can call on 469-1616 and or 1700. Okay, but can we go to the second segment?
Yes, the second segment is about creative work by me over the years. There are two songs in that section. The first one, I think everybody knows by now that I was I penned the lyrics for the school song for the Charlestown Secondary School, Industria et Virtute. That was way back in the 50s, 60s, I think. And there's an interesting story about that, because my younger sister was at school at the time. I maybe was teaching already, and she came home with the idea that the school had launched a competition to write a song. And I love to write. It's something that has been in my blood. I love to write stories. I love to write. And so I took on the task of penning the song, and I gave it to her quietly and maybe surreptitiously for her to take in, not with my name on it, but with hers. And she took it in, and it won the competition. And then I came out of the woodwork and claimed it as mine, which it was really. An interesting little story. And then the other song which everybody knows, Nevis Lovely.
Before we go off of Industria et Virtute, because some folks are going to say, well, what language is that and what does that mean?
It's Latin. It means by industry and merit. By industry and merit.
Yes.
Then there's Nevis Lovely Nevis, a song I penned in, I think, 1974 for a contestant in the Nevis Culturama show. They approached me and I penned it for that purpose, and it has lived on. That is how it started. And then there are poems, several poems. And I just want to mention a few, because they're all about Nevis. So I have a poem about, the first one is to my mother. She died in 2005, and maybe it's very short, and maybe just allow me to read it, since it's very short. She died in 2005, and I guess it's fair to say that I'm the writer in the family. So I penned a poem to her, and it goes like this. Mama, we don't know how you did it, but you were always there. To mend a shirt, to fix a lunch, to chive, direct, to teach, to scold, and sometimes use the strap, your way of showing right from wrong. To make sure we work hard and did our best, to keep our heads high, whate'er the test, but you were always there. Yes, you were always there to lend a hand, to welcome us, to see us through, to inspire, to calm, to soothe, to hold us up. We don't know how you did it. You didn't have... I tend to get cry when I read this. You didn't have much to work with, but you were always there. You didn't ask for much, knowing that we were all okay with all you craved. You always said, don't be afraid, all will be well. No harm will come your way, 'cause I hold you up in prayer. My job is to pray. 'Tis my role to cover you. Yes, my job is to pray. Now that you have closed your eyes for now, we know that through thick and thin, you will always be there. In our minds, alive in all our hearts, forever. Goodbye, Mama. Until we meet again, goodbye. And then there are others. I comment on local things. I have one called Nevis Mango. I have 2 mango trees in my yard, and I experience the same thing every year. At one time you can't get a mango, and then in July you can't pick up, you need help to pick up the mangoes. And so I built a poem about that, asking the mango tree, leave some for September, don't drop all one time. And then there's one about sheep. I don't know if, every motorist in Nevis knows we have a problem of sheep. And so there's one I like about because of sheep. Let me see if I can, because of sheep. Because, yes, let me just read a couple of verses from Because of Sheep. It begins by saying, since the barn I never see much sheep. Morning, noon and night, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, wherever I go I seeing sheep. So much so that when I lie down at night to sleep, all I see in front of me is sheep. And then it goes on. My house on fire, and I call the fire truck. The fireman says, sir, he's not going to work. We're trying our best to drive fast, but you're out of luck. We can't get to pass because of sheep. The ambulance driver complained to me, said a man had a heart attack. He rushed to get him, but had to turn back because of sheep, etc., etc. I'll mention one more, which this is a serious poem, and maybe I like this poem. It's a commentary on a trend in Nevis. Politics, green versus blue, and I've been to funerals and I've seen green coffins, and wherever you go is green, either green or blue, and I think we carry it too far. So I penned this poem. It's a commentary. It says, there was a time when a color was a color, and a shirt was a shirt, or a dress was a dress, when you wore them when you felt like and felt good about yourself. Not anymore. There was a time when blue was blue and green was green, and you weren't afraid of being seen in either of them. When you dressed for fun, according to your mood. Not anymore. So, not anymore means it's not so anymore. There was a time when people were sensible about these things, but those times have changed. I'll read one other one. Yes, there was a time when people knew that swearing in ceremonies were not occasions for party colors, since that only served to divide the people more. That there was no need for the shirt, the tie, the dress, the hat. Imagine that, to be of a party color, because that only served to divide the people even more. That's just a snapshot of the poetry section and the others.
And that's the objective, right?
It's a commentary.
Yes.
The writer, one doesn't have to, we can comment in different ways. We can comment through poetry, we can get on the radio and talk. I have used the medium of poetry to comment on something that I see. Of course, the one about the sheep ends by saying, nobody sell goat, chain and rope no more. And it says this nonsense got to stop. We can't all go to sleep and let the island run to the dogs because of sheep, or words to that effect.
Yes.
So it's a commentary.
And I just want to go back, if you will, to the poem that you wrote about Mama.
Yes.
And it tells a lot about Nevisians and Nevisian women.
Yes.
And how they carried the household.
Yes.
Almost, even when the men were there, almost single-handedly. And the tower of strength
was...
Yes.
Yes, well, that comes out in the book. Because, as you said earlier, it's a story that all of us, maybe, who grew up in the 40s and 50s, know about. Our parents were not rich. Our parents had many children. Nowadays, parents have 2 and 3. Many of the parents in the 40s and 50s had 8 and 9 and 10. I am one of 8 siblings, 5 boys and 3 girls. And so I grew up in a house where at one time there were 10 mouths to feed. And I speak about that in the book. How do you feed 10 children? When in days when getting water was difficult, we didn't have fridges. We used coal pots in the early days, and we had to go up to the hills around Hallground to look wood on a Saturday morning and things like that. But 10 mouths to feed. And yes, the females carried a heavy load. Not that the men didn't play their part, but in terms of organizing the home and making sure the children were okay and fed, a lot of weight fell on the women. And we owe a debt of gratitude to our women of the 50s and 60s for the loads they carry. I'm one of 8. My wife is one of 10, I think, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying that would resonate to lots of people who grew up in that period. Big family.
You think as people read this book and learn of those things, they will perhaps have a better appreciation and understand that maybe it is not as hard as they say it is now. If they were to learn how it used to be.
That is true.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Manners.
Hi, good evening.
I can relate to what you're saying. Mrs. Myers. I'm not much younger than you, and
You're a lot younger than me.
Situation. I was thinking, maybe some person, maybe my age, I think some persons are sometimes ashamed to say where they come from. I don't know, that's just my perception. But I normally would relate to my children. With the distance, you were living nearer to the dam, and I had to come from Cox to get water by your area. They would want to know if it's a Clorox bottle I used to walk with. So I would have to tell them the water in the bucket was lighter than the bucket itself. Things like that, you know. So I would relate to my children. But I think sometimes persons maybe get embarrassed. I would hear persons saying, my children are going through what I went through. But they taught us how to save and how to be better persons, I think. So if we pass on the stories, as you say, maybe at least they will appreciate what we did to get them, what our parents did to get us where we are. So that's just my input.
I agree with you. I'm firmly convinced that if we tell the stories of the difficulties we had, it would benefit our children, because they'll have a greater sense of gratitude for the sacrifices that their parents had to go through. Of course, there might be some who say, I don't want to hear about that anymore, and so on and so forth. But I think most people like to talk about their past. I've heard the premier on this radio saying how he's a young fellow. Well, let me not say he's a young fellow. He's a young gentleman who, in other words, he came from a later time. And I'm sure I heard him recently telling with some amount of, what should I say? Well, he enjoyed telling how they had to buy, what do you call it, sausages, and they were 7 in a tin, and they had to share them around, etc., etc. So people don't mind talking about the past, because I think it gives them a sense of success, of overcoming, to say, well, that is what I went through, and this is what I am now. So,
but why do you think, Mr. Manners, the caller agrees, you agree, I agree, and a lot of folks agree? Why do you think it's not happening, though?
In terms of writing or talking?
Yeah, both.
Well,
let me just get this, and I'll come back. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
And good evening, Mr. Manners.
Good evening.
Lord, brother, I like your story. I could align myself with some of the things you say in the book, because you said you were sleeping on the grass bed, right?
Yes.
Well,
I did. We all did in those days.
Hello?
I said we all did.
Yeah, well, my mother was a little richer than you, because my mother had 13. And we lived in a little 12 by 10 wooden house, but it was upstairs. In the night, my mother would sleep upstairs, that is on the bed, and then we would sleep downstairs under the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember while sleeping on the floor on a crocker's bag, I roll and I fall off the bag and I cut my ear. So I enjoyed talking about my time when I was small and how poor life we had life. And I could tell you more to one Sunday, my mother best meal we had a Sunday because her week's pay that week was $1. And that Sunday our dinner was boiled potato in the clothes and molasses water. Sit down in the floor and we eat that and drink that, and maybe then we belch and we went to play. And not a matter know that we didn't have chicken or rice and peas.
And you enjoy telling those stories?
How you mean, man? I love it. People shame, but shame? I don't know nothing about no shame.
I don't think many of us are ashamed really to tell those stories. Most people I know, as I said, love to tell those stories because... Yes, go ahead.
You got some people, you know. Me and you and Mr. Webbo, we wouldn't shame. But you got some people playing higher than the clouds. So they would afraid to talk about how they had life in those days. But I enjoy talking about it, man. I love it. Because it made me what I am today.
Yes.
Learn to appreciate what is around. And let these people, these young ones know that, hey, you all have it. What should I say?
That life wasn't always this easy.
No. I remember me and my brother had to fight for one spoon to eat. So I had to wait until he don't eat and then I get a spoon. So anyway, I enjoy the program as usual.
Okay, right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Right. Yes, Mr. Manners.
Where were we? Yeah, I think, you know, when I read some things in the book that I have written, even I am surprised. I make the point, and we're going to get to that in the third section. I make the point that when I left teaching in 1977, as a graduate teacher, my salary was $750. I find that hard to believe, but I think it is true. Salaries...
Okay, we'll get back to the salaries. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Mr. Miles, good night.
Hi, good evening, hi.
Yeah, you're telling a very interesting story there. I really like it. But you mentioned that the story tells of the hardship that our parents had. But it also tells a positive story too. Because what it does, it teaches us, the younger ones, well, not so much me, but the younger people, of the resilience and the determination of these, our parent and grandparent, and that they had a purpose and a plan. That even though today, this is what it is, I'm not going to remain this way. I'm going to work hard, I'm going to plan, and I'm going to try to secure a better future for my children and grandchildren. And so we should take that legacy as we hear this story. We should take that legacy and try to emulate as much as possible these people, our parents and grandparents, because as I said, yes, it had a negative side, but it also shows the positive side, that they were very resilient and determined. And even though they did have some hardship, they had a plan and a purpose, and they worked hard towards it. And so young people can take that legacy now and help to propel themselves and their children forward. So this story should be told, and I'm glad that you're telling it.
Okay,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Okay.
Just one thing, I don't think there's a negative side really. I think it's all positive, because our parents and the people of the 40s and 50s, there's a lot of hard work to bring us where we are. They were dedicated to see their children through, As my poem about my mama says, we don't know how she did it, but she was always there,
In a sense, they played the hand they were dealt.
Yes, and they made the best of their circumstances.
Yes.
Whether they had to feed us dry potatoes for supper, or whatever, they did their best to push us forward, and we have to bow and say thanks for the things they did to get us where we are. That comes out in the book, and sometimes I read the stuff and I feel teary-eyed because, wow, that's what happened.
Okay, because you were speaking about your salary back then.
Yes.
When as a graduate.
Yes, I was saying salaries, most people wouldn't know that income increased significantly in the early 1980s. I had a lot to do with...
Okay, Mr. Manners, I'm going to have to interrupt you again. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Congratulations, and I'm glad that you're on this topic because I can recall my boy days growing up.
Caller, would you do me a favor and turn your radio down, please?
Yes, okay. My grandfather, who is Division, Charles Woolward, from Bush Hill, Cox area, he always speaks about his family back here on Nevis.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came across the Nevis in the year 1969 on the 27th of December, I had close touch with all my relatives. You had Martha Brown, Bukra. You had the postman there, Sonny Walters, and he spoke about his family, and he told us, even Mr. Howell, Johnny Howell, his wife, these persons were to call him uncle, and he was a manager at one of those estates in St. Kitts, because we grew up on an estate farm, and he never talked about his brother Joe Hicks, and I think, as you were saying earlier, that sometimes we don't talk about our family enough. And on the other side now, persons didn't know, my name is Joseph Woolward, but when I went to school, I carried Daniel, and this Daniel came from Butlers. My grandfather was called Josh Daniel from Seston Road, and my father was Zacchaeus Daniel, and I know all my aunts, and we need to get back to those such, and I always never forget.
Okay.
I always tell my children, when I see my family members, I would relate to them and stuff like that. This is your so and so and so and so. You understand? And I think we need to get back.
Yeah, we need to get back. So I hope
it is helpful.
I hope
and the days of talking about sleeping and flow. I remember my days. Someone was sleep and bed. They sew the bed together, and the old cloth, the old clothes and so. They stuff them. I sleep on the grass bed too. I'll see them. I cut the grass and everything. So our young people, they should be able to appreciate. We were hard workers because we worked on the estate, and we had our own little plots, and we had to cook. We didn't have much clothes, but I can tell you, we ate. We were well fed because my grandfather, my mother's father, he never, and she herself, we cooked. We ate fish. We had animals. We had sheep. We had goat. We had cattle. We had fowls. And so we were well fed. But when it comes to the clothing part of that, things wasn't too bright on the side.
Okay.
But we had a good time.
All right.
And here am I today. Okay. I'm here today, enjoying. I have a family of myself. And I always tell my children, you all come up in the good times. We slept on floor when you step in those wooden houses, and sometimes you see those fellas, they call them police, bugs, crawling out and stuff like that. So, I am happy for those days, and I'm glad that you are on this topic and bringing these things back forward so that our people, our younger people, could appreciate and know where we came from and where we are today.
Okay,
and
thank you. And I will encourage, as you said, I think, well, of course, I'm interested in selling the book, and I think one thing that parents could do for their children this Christmas is to get them a copy of Beyond the Bush and let them read for themselves the way life used to be. I think it would help them to become better people and to know a little bit about their cultural history.
All right, so
Section 3.
yes, let's do that.
Oh, as I said, the book consists of 3 sections, and you seem to want to get very much into Section 3, so let me not disappoint you and get into it.
Right,
Section
and we're
3
running out of time.
is
so-
entitled A Difficult Personal Journey. And as I said earlier, that it's a story I felt I had to tell, because it's a story of struggle. And I think struggles make better stories. If you're going to tell all happy things, then that's not good storytelling. There's nothing. But it's about my moving from being a teacher to becoming a professional accountant. And to summarize it, it goes something like this. I had finished university and I was posted to this Bastia High School in St. Kitts. And while there, I realized that this could not be the end as far as studying was for me. I began looking around for something else. I thought that, well, I had more energy, more gas in my tank, as it were, and I could go further. And I began to look around, and I looked at several things, and somehow somebody got me interested in the field of becoming a professional accountant. The only problem I had in that regard is that I had never studied accountancy. In our day in secondary school, accountancy, the business subjects were not taught. So commerce was not taught, accountancy was not taught. It would surprise some to know that one of my O-level subjects in 1961 was scripture. We sat scripture, and we had to learn the missionary journeys of Paul. Those are the subjects we studied. So I didn't have any experience in business, and I didn't have any qualification, but I decided I wanted to become an accountant. Webbo, you've read it. You asked me some questions. Mr. Herbert, you want to ask me about some of what you read?
Yes, the other interesting part is when you said one of the reasons why you wrote the book. When you went to St. Kitts and you took a young lady out for lunch. Remember that?
Oh yes, well that's back to the intro. You mean a very young lady?
Yes.
A very young lady. Today happens to be her birthday. That's my granddaughter Dalila, and happens to be. When you say I took a lady out for lunch, I got a bit worried because I think my wife is listening.
That's why I said it.
But you're referring to our granddaughter,
yes,
who happens to be celebrating a birthday today. And as I told you earlier, I was in St. Kitts today hoping to overnight, but I got this call, so I came back on the boat this afternoon. So happy birthday, Dalila, my granddaughter. The thing is this: we were driving through Bastia one day, and she was in the back seat of my car. She was 9 at the time, and she stunned me with a question. She's a talkative type, and she just asked out of the blue. She said, "Grandpa, are you rich?" And I said, "No, I'm not rich, but why that question?" And she said, "Well, you're driving a new car, and your house is nice, you know." And as I said in the book in the introduction, I realized then, at her young age, all she knew was that I was driving a new car, and my house is okay. They come over to Nevis. She would have no idea of the past.
Yes.
And that highlighted to me they need to write these things for them. Not only her own mother. Some years ago when I mentioned that there was used to be sugarcane in Nevis, growing in sugarcane, and she said, sugarcane Nevis used to have sugarcane? And I was surprised that she didn't know that. But how would she know? Unless we write books like this to let them know that the Nevis are covered with sugarcane in the 50s and 60s.
And use them in the schools.
Yes. We need to tell it in the schools, but we can, as I said, we can tell it, we can put it on the curriculum, but we can also do it by writing about it and let people read them.
Yes.
We're running out of time now. We haven't touched on section 3 very much.
Yes.
And you wanted to get into that very much. As I was saying earlier, the story is that having looked around and wanting something else to study, to move on in life, I realized that no respect to teaching, I love to teach, but I recognize that that was not the end for me. I needed to go further to get maybe where I wanted to go. And so I tell the story of how I did something which, so I decided to go off to England to study accountancy. And the heart-rending, it's a very human story. And I went off and I left my family. When I read it now, I begin to know whether my head was good. But when I left, we had 3 children, and the youngest one was just under 6 months old. I tell all that in the book. He wasn't walking, couldn't even lift up his head off his pillow. He was 5 and plus months old. But at the time, I decided to go, and my wife Annette supported me. And I look back now and say, well, I have to be grateful. But we were doing it for the family. But I went off and left them. And the book, this section 3 tells about my struggles in England. You know, some of us tend to give the impression we never had struggles, that we went away to study and it was all plain sailing. I didn't have plain sailing at all. And I tell that in the story. I tell the story of how I went to England in winter. I'd never gone to England, never been to a first world country. I'd been around the Caribbean, yes, but I'd never been to England. And to leave to go to England in the middle of one of the worst winters of the time, I had a terrible time. And having to land in London and having to get a place to rent and ending up in a room I rented from a I think it was a Pakistani landlord, to find there was no heating. Have you been to colder countries? But I don't think people could imagine what it was like coming from a place like Nevis, not having experienced winter and ending up in an apartment about the size of the studio with no central heating. You couldn't bathe, you couldn't read or study because the place was so cold at night, etc. And so I tell the story of that in my book. I tell the story of how I had gone hoping to come back quickly to my family, but it didn't work out that way. And I explain all that. And the high point of that story to me is a section where I describe how I took on too much. Not only was I didn't have the experience and the background in business to take on this very difficult qualification. Let me say the ACCA qualification is a difficult qualification to get. It's not easy. And I had gone through the university and had never had any trouble, but doing a professional course was a different kettle of fish. More difficult, more challenging, and so on and so forth. So I had some problems, and I explained it all in the book. I won't go through it here now. But there's that part in the book that makes me sometimes shed tears, because I was struggling at one time. I tell about the fact that my money ran out in June. I had to go work in a car factory. Something I'm proud about in a way, because having studied economics and history and teaching and whatnot, I wasn't accustomed to that type of work. But my money ran out, and I had to go and work at Vauxhall car factory for 10 weeks. And there was I on the on the assembly line. My job was to install steering wheels and brake pedals. As there was I as a regular worker with the other workers there from 7 o'clock in the morning doing that work. I work during the day, I work at nights as well. So see me going to work at 7 o'clock at midnight going for lunch. I wasn't accustomed to that kind of thing, but I had to do it to survive. And then my exam results came and I didn't do it. I think I'd taken on too much because I needed to rush back to my family. I said, I'm a Matthew student, I'm going to take on more than normal, and I took on too much and it didn't work out as I had it planned. And I remember when I reported to my wife that I didn't succeed as the way I had it planned, you know. Things are tough with me, and I remember she sent me a note and she said, although she was home with the two children having her own struggles, I was having a tough time up there as well, and she sent me a note and she said, don't worry about a thing. Everything's gonna be alright. And I tell the story of how at that time when I got that note, I was, well, let me tell you the words I used. I want people to read it. I said I was crushed. I was on the floor and I needed a hand to lift me up. I was that in such desperate straits. And when I got that note, it says, don't worry about a thing. Everything gonna be all right. You know, in a way it pumped new life into me, and I had to get up and move again, etc., etc., etc. So a very interesting human story, which maybe tells the story that many Nivisions have had to endure, because in our, that's not a story of the 50s and 60s, that's a story of the 80s. But we didn't have rich parents who could send us off to college. We had to fend for ourselves, and so we had to find ways to finance our education. I had to do that. I did it by going to Danny Walwyn and borrowing $8,000, etc., etc. Anyway, it's all in section 3 of the book. A very human story. I told it just as it happens, with the problems, the struggles, the failures, but the eventual triumphs. And it's a very, in my view, sometimes I read it and I say, boy, those are the days. And I like to, since the time is running out, just read the final section of the book, because it captures, in a way, the struggles. I'll read it. Let me see if I find it quickly, very quickly. Yes. It says, there is a certain joy and satisfaction that one gets from telling of the path that one has trod, of difficulties experienced, of mountains climbed, of deserts crossed, of crazy things done, of lessons learnt, of contribution by others who helped along the way. Certain parts of my story brought tears to my eyes as I wrote, and the question kept confronting me, did I really do that? And then it says, but that is the nature of life. And this line, the following line is powerful to me. And what is life without memories to savor and stories to tell? So I think we need to tell our stories. Someone will benefit from our experience and from the stories we tell. They'll say, well, I had similar story, but I was afraid to say so. I invite people to tell stories. Not everybody has the ability to write, but one doesn't have to be a professional writer. Whoever you are, don't be afraid to seek to tell your story.
And you see, part of the reason why I was so hooked on that third section, it what can be inferred from it, not necessarily what it directly said.
What is that?
So see what the challenges, the struggles, and how you overcame.
Yes.
And you didn't rob.
No, I didn't rob.
And you didn't steal.
No.
And you didn't kill anybody.
No.
But if I've done one of these shows or programs, I've done 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And too often, I hear people copping out because they didn't have it smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody gave them this. Therefore, you're sending people to do this, that, and so on. And I keep telling people that a lot of us had harder hills to climb.
Yes.
And we didn't rob anybody.
No. And that's important. Because as I said, sometimes the younger folk think that things come easy. But things don't always come easy. So I just said it's a story of struggle in terms of money, struggle in terms of my plan not going as easy as I thought it would go, struggle of being away from one's family. But the beautiful thing about it is, well, for me, because I know several people have gone through this experience and didn't make it. There are lots of people like that. So maybe I'm pleased with the fact that I eventually conquered it and made it, and that makes me happy to tell the story that it wasn't easy. My family went through it with me, and I think I'm pleased to know that in the end it has benefited us all, and that pleases me. But it wasn't easy and simple.
Hansel F. Manners, Beyond the Bush and More.
Beyond the Bush and More.
We wish you all the very best. It's a good read.
You think it's a good read?
The evidence shows that.
Okay.
If not the whole thing, the evidence shows that I think Section 3 is a good read, right?
You like Section 3?
Yeah, it's
you like to hear about my struggles?
Because it's mine.
Okay, it resonates with you.
Yes.
And I think it will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they all have struggles. Not everybody likes to tell the stories of their struggles, but we all have struggles. But overcoming struggles tends to make you feel happy and triumphant that you bore the pains and came through successfully.
Mr. Manners, thank you very much.
And thanks very much for having me.
And tell Mrs. Manners that she did a good job sending you that note.
Yes. I have to take my hat off to her.
Yes.
She's a nice lady, and she says she knows how to make one cheerful.
Yes, she does.
And it came out there. I don't think she played a great role. I think if she hadn't sent me that note, she had sent me a note saying, "Boy, why don't you come home? What you doing?"
Yes.
Things might have turned out differently. But those lines, don't worry about a thing, because everything's gonna be all right. Every time I read it, I say it in the book. Every time I read it, I cry inside.
This program repeats tomorrow following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed in the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the news broadcasting company or its advertisers.